Welcome back, my friends. Thank you so much for tuning into the Andy Shectman and Silver Slayer Show, the show that talks about the importance of precious metals, more specifically silver. Andy's actually the CEO of Miles Franklin, the most trusted, respected precious metals dealer in the world. So if you want to get your hands on some of that shiny stuff, send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Also, in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, I have the email there as well. So what's up, Andy? What is going on?
Good to see you again, my man. Yeah, and I've been telling you and everyone else about our new website that's almost done. And it's, as I've mentioned, it's been a bunch of setbacks and mishaps, but it looks like we're going to soft launch it. I'm thinking maybe even tomorrow to my
Wow.
office or the first part of next week to my office. And I would like to launch it next week or the week after to the public. It's really close. We're just dotting the I's and crossing the
Yeah.
T's, testing links, reading script, making sure there's no misspelled words, making sure all the
Yeah.
links don't go to a dead end, etc. It's been quite an experience, man. But we appreciate everyone sending us an email at info@milesfranklin.com for the current price list, for any questions that they have, asking if they want to be contacted, etc. And we'll still do that. We're going to be a hybrid model even
Yeah.
once the website is up. So we're a lot of touch points. We want to have that personal relationship because I
Yeah.
think where the world is going, I really do, man. I think that relationships are going to mean something. They're going to be important, and you never know the significance or realize maybe the significance of a relationship until there's a problem. And we're strong in that category. So, anyways, I appreciate the introduction and always look
Yeah.
forward to our get-togethers. So,
Yeah.
what's going on? Lots going on.
Ironically, I think that's actually one of the best things about the company is, you would think it's more ideal to just go online, like on your website, but I do get a lot of emails from people that actually like this better because it is more personal, right? You get to know their name and kind of their story and continue building this business relationship instead of just filling an order on some random website. You don't know who's behind the screen taking. I think that that hybrid is really nice, especially like you said, moving forwards. And also make sure you let them know I sent you. It helps me out as
Yes.
well. And I appreciate everyone that has been. I mean, so many emails from people letting me know how great their experience is. And actually, I know you guys have a lot of questions for Andy. A lot of people are asking questions. So I think we're going to do a live Q&A soon on my channel. We'll just set it up. You guys, we'll be live streaming it. You guys can, go through the chat and ask questions. We'll just kind of pick and choose. I think that'd be really cool to kind of respond in real time as well.
I love the Q&As. I'd be happy to do it as soon as next week. And
Yeah.
it's a great way because a lot of the questions people ask are on multiple people's minds and persons' minds, people's. It's on lots of people's minds. And I think that it's a good way to engage your listeners who have been great to talk to. So I'm all for it. I think it's something we should do and maybe do once a month or something to
Yeah.
to kind of make it a little bit more of a give and take with the audience rather than you and I just chatting to people.
Yes. Yeah. So you said we were talking a little bit before we started. You said there were some updates with
Yeah,
that whole situation. Did you want
sure.
to?
Yeah, I'd like to go over lots of things that we can talk about today. We've talked about a narrative, the BRICS nations, and this growing de-dollarization that we've seen really start to accelerate. And it's actually borderline concerning. It should be concerning to everybody, really, in terms of the acceleration and the de-dollarization that we are seeing really across the globe. And we can talk about even a very small country who, in and of itself, really wouldn't amount to too much in terms of headlines. But to me, when you add it to the growing list of countries, all making similar overtures, all making similar relationships, all making similar moves in terms of de-dollarization or having trade agreements with other countries outside the dollar, or just finding ways to free themselves from the Western hegemony. Ghana is a good example. November 24th, an article out of Reuters talks about Ghana's government working on a new policy to buy oil with gold rather than US dollar reserves. This is just one of many countries looking to distance
Right.
themselves from the petrodollar. And
Makes
a
sense.
country, yeah, well, especially for a developing nation like Ghana, because a country like that who has dollar denominated debt has to sell their own local currency in order to buy dollars, to buy oil,
Right.
or to pay their debt. So this strong dollar globally is really hurting emerging nations like Ghana. And I think you will see more and more and more countries in and of themselves for various reasons, most of them related to the Western hegemony, the inordinate strength of the dollar, the hypocrisy of the West, or the growing accumulation of nations forming in the BRICS and the Shanghai Gold Corp or Shanghai Corporation Organization, in on the Belt Road Initiative, and other organizations we can talk about here in a moment that are moving away from the dollar, Ghana being one of them. And this is a big deal, I think, when you realize what gives the dollar its status worldwide is the fact that everyone for the last 50 years has had to buy dollars in order to, or stockpile them in order to purchase precious metals. And when, or excuse me, purchase oil, excuse me. And so when the break from that type of ideology where countries are able to break away from using dollars and use things such as their local currency, like in the case of Russia and China, or in the case of Nigeria, selling their oil to the Chinese for the petro yuan bond. We're seeing all of these arrangements that are happening faster and faster and faster, that again, in and of themselves, aren't as relevant as the cumulative combination of all of these countries that are forming a very formidable force all against the Western hegemony. We can talk about India and about how much metal
Oh,
India is buying.
wow.
Now, when you
It
talk
doubled, right?
about, yeah, the numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
And we just recently saw the numbers in terms of September, and that's what you're talking about, where
Yeah.
there were 400 tons of gold sold in the third quarter out of the United States, exported out of the United States. And, only 120 tons were verified who they were sold to. 280, or two-thirds of all the gold sold, which represented, in terms of quarterly export numbers, 400 tons represented literally double the biggest third quarter ever. And yet, you talk about year to date, almost 800 tons, somewhere in that neighborhood, over 700, was the biggest amount of exports in a quarter since 1967, or in a year rather, since 1967, and the year is not even over yet.
Jeez.
So, but a lot of time, and when we talk about China, they bought, I don't know, 40 plus million ounces of silver in September. And when you talk about these numbers that we see each month, June and July, and they often get revised. And we just saw a revision of the July numbers, which came back at 71.1 tons, or 2.29 million ounces of gold that were imported by India in the month of July, and 1,750.2 tons, or 56.27 million troy ounces of silver, which was imported in July. And that's a hair behind their record imports for a month. When you look at July being 56 million ounces, September being 45, I mean, you're talking every single month, these deliveries are more than there is silver on the registered category right now, which backs the whole price setting mechanism of the West. The amount of silver that is being exported and imported by India and or gold is ridiculous. And it is all leaving the Western vaults. And it was interesting that Reuters and Bloomberg said of the 280 tons that were not verified as to who bought them, those two entities and the World Gold Council surmised that it was Russia, China, India, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia purchasing all of that gold. Now, where have we heard those names before?
Right.
Oh, yeah, the BRICS nations. So,
And I wonder
look,
why. I wonder
Right.
why with this
And
digital currency backed by physical commodities. Hmm.
yes, that's correct.
Hmm.
And not only that, gold was reclassified what? A tier one reserve
Yep.
asset. So you're seeing these countries, and they're all doing it to get a seat at the table, which we can talk about in a moment. Also, I think it's very important to realize that now what we are seeing that it's more or less been confirmed that Xi Jinping is going to travel to Saudi Arabia. And he's only traveled maybe once since 2020 because of COVID. This is a huge overture. It is a very big deal that I believe will seal the deal on the BRICS alliance with Saudi Arabia. And you could argue it is the beginning of a new gold-backed BRICS
Yeah.
currency when they seal the deal with Saudi Arabia. Now, we've talked at length about how all of the OPEC producing countries are on the Belt Road Initiative. Saudi Arabia is really the linchpin to all of this.
Right.
And you now have the United Arab Emirates who also said they're going to join BRICS. They've already joined the BRICS banks. All of these countries, many of which were Western allies, are now moving away from the West quietly and building this alliance. Another thing that I wanted to talk about, and you can stop me with any questions along the way, is the EAEU. It is the Eurasian Economic Union, and it's been around for a while, and it consists of Russia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia. And I probably got that last Stan wrong. It's Kyrgyz Stan.
Wow. Okay.
Kyrgyzstan, I don't know, in Armenia. Anyways, they recently just announced that they are speeding up the design of a common payment system, which they've been discussing for quite some time right now. And the guy that brought it up really was Sergei Glaziev, and he's been around for a long time, the last several months, talking about, well, he's the EAU's minister in charge of integration and macroeconomics. He's one of the Russian finance ministers. He's the one who came out and told us that there's going to be a digital currency pegged to commodities and local currencies, meaning the BRICS currencies along with some sort of commodities like gold, like silver, like other commodities. He's the one who's been talking about this the most, and he's also in charge of this group of the Eurasian Economic Commission. And anyways, they just extended a very serious proposal, you could call it, to the BRICS nations, and that is a common payment system that is in direct competition with Visa and MasterCard.
Oh,
and
wow.
so you are beginning to see all of these pieces come into place.
Right.
Now, you recently heard about the US issuing a beta test with all the banks on the Fed token, or the digital Fed central bank digital currency. One of the entities involved in that is MasterCard. So you're seeing a splintering of these groups where, look, the East and the folks in the Eurasian continent and the BRICS nations, they don't want to have to work with Visa, with MasterCard, with JP Morgan. They don't want to have to buy US dollars to buy commodities.
Right.
They want to stand on their own feet. And I think it's a big deal. And this comes on the heels of the BRICS members already transacting their bilateral trade in local currencies and bypassing the US dollar. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the M bridge, M as in Mary. That M bridge is a new technology that was developed between the United Arab Emirates, China, and I want to say Singapore. I'm almost positive. I might be wrong on the Singapore. I have to go back and check. Anyways, it's these three countries that developed a technology, and they did a 40-day beta test that allows cross-border trading with central bank digital currencies, all of it sidestepping US intermediary banks, in other words, sidestepping the SWIFT. So you have these bilateral and multilateral deals that are all using local currencies. You have people wanting to use gold to buy oil. You have a new payment system that is being initiated or introduced that sidesteps Visa and MasterCard. You have cross-border central bank digital currencies that can be traded sidestepping SWIFT and the intermediary banks. It's all starting to speed up. And when you talk about these announcements, well, this announcement about this new payment system was announced last Monday. And so it's starting to really
Yeah.
grow and
Right.
speed up. And you need to stay on top of this because to me, look, at this point right now, man, 60% or virtually 60% of the world's population are either on or are expected to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the BRICS nations, or the Belt Road Initiative. And if they all do join, you're talking somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 85, even 90% of human population, all moving away from
The
the
US
US
dollar.
and the West. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
So
That's
I have a
exactly
couple
right.
questions. So
Yes.
what would this do to the price of gold and or silver? Would they have a standard price? What would that mean for someone who's
Well, gold will
investing?
have to, I believe gold will have to be revaluated.
Right.
And the
Completely.
reason, yes, well, one of the reasons that I say that is a new article that has come out recently about the Dutch central bank. Now, it's important to realize that central banks are holding more gold right now than at any time since 1975. And they have most of this gold held in something called a revaluation account, a GRA, a gold revaluation account. And it's basically an accounting item that records the unrealized gains of a central bank's gold. In other words, they are not allowed to offset the gold on their account with liabilities on their balance sheet. And most of the gold, because in Europe's case was accumulated during the Bretton Woods era, is on their books at $35 an ounce. In the US, I believe it's 42.22 an ounce, and in their GRA account. And so you're talking well below the market value. So the governor of the Dutch central bank came out just the other day in a television interview, and he said, look, the gold within the revaluation account ensures the solvency of the central bank. And the reason he was talking about it was because all of these central banks in the West included have used the manipulation of interest rates and the easy money to buy their crappy bonds. And so they go in and they are actually buying their bonds and expanding their balance sheet. In the case of the Federal Reserve, over 8 trillion, almost 9 trillion in mortgage-backed securities and US treasuries. Well, what happens as rates rise? The bonds that they have accumulated are getting eviscerated because they were all accumulated at lower levels. And when you talk about long-term commitments, so they have bonds that they bought that are long duration, let's say 30 years at 2.5% on average, versus short-term obligations of in the case of the Federal Reserve, having to back the deposits by the commercial banks at 4 or 5%, it is setting up for a real problem with their balance sheet. All of these countries, when you look at what's happening to interest rates and bond prices, they're becoming insolvent. And so what the Dutch finance minister is basically saying is we need to revalue the gold that is held at $35 an ounce in Europe and $42 here in the States, and value it at a level that makes the balance sheet solvent. In other words, where the liabilities and the assets find some sort of a unity, where right now the gold is valued so unbelievably low, they're not able to do that. But when you hear the governor of the Dutch central bank say this, my feeling is they wouldn't stop at $1,800 where we are right now. How about 5,000? How about 10,000? And peg it to a new floor.
Right.
Remember, it is a tier one reserve asset. Remember, central banks own more gold than at any time since 1975. So the banks are accumulating gold because why? Because it was reclassified tier one. So they're all buying gold and they all have a position in it. Even the small countries, we can talk about that in a moment. The small countries are massively accumulating gold. And when you look at what's going on, like even looking at the if you go to the websites of the German National Bank, the Bundesbank, of the Dutch National Bank, of the Polish National Bank, of the France, I'll read you a couple comments that are actually on these central banks. And the German central bank says when they repatriated their gold, it was done for cost efficiency, security, and liquidity. In Poland, they say that they recently on their website have disclosed that their gold bars adhere to London good delivery standards. Why would they say that? because it's important that all of these bars be London good delivery, 24 karat in purity. So they all have the ability to trade in this new system, which they are almost but telling you is going to have gold backing to it. The Bank of France came out on their website and said that they have an ambitious program to upgrade the quality of their gold reserves as well. In other words, a lot of the gold these countries hold are not pure 24 karat, like in the case of the US. Even though Fort Knox hasn't been audited, most of it is amalgamation of melted down $20 gold pieces like this, which are not 24 karat gold. And so they're melted down. The bars do not meet London good delivery
Yeah,
standards. So when
there
you
was
see
a
Poland, sorry,
there was a news story that broke a couple weeks ago about this. Something about gold bars that were, I don't know if they're fake or, man, I almost made a video about it.
might have been
Forget
the
what it was.
bars that were delivered to Germany. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
any way you look at it, the bars that are supposedly held at Fort Knox, which hasn't been audited since '56, are not 24 karat gold. They do not meet the definition of London good delivery standard. Yet Poland and France and a lot of these European countries are going out of their way to tell the world, hey, our bars comply to prevailing industry standards. This is a big deal because you have an inadequate degree of integrity on the US bars because they're not 24 karat. Now, when you talk about these same central banks, they're promoting gold ownership. The French central bank states on their website that gold is the ultimate store of value. According to the president of the German central bank, gold is the bedrock of stability for the international monetary system. And on the Central Bank of Italy's website, gold is an excellent hedge against adversity. Another good reason for holding a large position is gold protection against high inflation, since gold tends to keep its value over time. Moreover, unlike foreign currencies, gold cannot depreciate or be devalued.
right,
Gold is an asset issued by a government, not an asset issued by a government or a central bank, so it does not depend on the issuer's solvency.
right.
This is all written on the websites of these countries. The Dutch National Bank says a bar of gold retains its value and is the perfect piggy bank. It's the anchor of trust in the financial system. If the system collapses, the gold stock can serve as the basis to build it up
Yeah,
again. So think about this for a minute. Think about this. These are central banks that issue their own currencies, and their only job is to ensure economic stability, right? Yet they openly state that gold is safer than the currencies that they
yeah,
issue, and as protection against high inflation, adversity, and the possibility of system collapse. This is a big deal. They are recommending people own gold not as an asset issued by a government or a central bank, but as wealth that has outlived 2 world wars, German
right.
hyperinflation, the Great Depression, etc. We are seeing this acceleration, this move towards commodities, away from debt instruments, away from the dollar. And as Zoltan Pozsar calls it, Bretton Woods 3, a system based upon commodities. And I think that the central banks are alluding to a new monetary system based on
Yeah,
gold. Honestly, I truly do. Now, you're the silver slayer, you're not the gold slayer. What does
right,
that mean to silver? Go
right,
back to the beginning of time, there is a 90% correlation between gold and silver in their movement. 90%. As one goes, so does the other. This is over 5,000 years worth of correlation.
right.
And, there's always the old statement that gold goes first and silver will follow it. Look, gold is the
I
money of the
mean,
banks and silver is the money of the people. One will
yeah,
not go to the moon without the other. And
right,
one last thing, and then I'll listen to your question. When you talk about central banks buying gold or silver, normally they haven't been, but look at what India is doing.
right.
Just in the last few months, they've purchased, I don't know, they're projected to purchase over 300 metric tons of silver this year. And so it is just beginning, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of the acquisition, not just of gold, but silver by all of the countries around the world because it is non-dollar denominated wealth.
It was the biggest supply deficit this year. The Silver Institute's numbers
200
came
million
out.
ounces. That's
Yep, and
right.
then we exceeded 1.21 billion ounces this year. But I'm curious, a couple articles I was covering, they were saying that they don't expect this to move on into 2023, even with India. But I think that this is really the start, right? The biggest supply deficit. I think this is really the start. And I've talked about this with like the Green New Deal, this new digital era. A lot of people were saying, this is something that's not possible, or that the silver shortage won't be able to extend as far as people like we're exaggerating. But I truly think that this is just the beginning. And imagine, and my question kind of goes into, by the year 2025, 2026, what would the demand of silver look like, since by then how many EVs are going to, every automobile company switching over. So many, I mean, solar panel demand increased 15% this year alone. You have, countries like India buying, then as people pick up on it, you have the investment sector, not only just the industrial sector. I can't even imagine, like, what would it be, 3 billion ounces? I mean, more. I mean, it's it's crazy that people honestly think that that's sustainable, that type of demand is actually going to be able to be met. It's not, right? And low supply, high demand pushes the price up. Spot price is manipulated, but the premiums, the price you got to pay out of pocket is still rising. And I don't think premiums are going to drop anytime soon as well. But yeah, what do you think about demand, like this year compared to the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think anyone who says it's not going to be sustainable, I mean, it's rhetoric. It's noise. As far as I'm concerned, we can look at the facts. First of
Right.
all, geologically, silver is found in geological terms in a form called epithermal, meaning very near the surface. So the big deposits were found decades ago. That's
Yeah.
first and foremost. For 5,000 years, the mining ratio, gold to silver, silver to gold, was 15.5 or 16 to 1. 16 ounces of silver for every 1 ounce of gold. Now it's 7 to 1. So
Right.
in 5,000 years, that number has over halved to 7 to 1.
Yes.
And when you look at the reality that of all the silver coming to industry, only 35% of it comes from companies that specifically mine silver. So
Right.
in
It's
a billion
byproduct.
ounces, right, 350 million ounces come from mining companies like First Majestic and Endeavor. The rest comes from byproduct mining of other material, of other metals. And so the supply chain not only is depleting, but it's also very small when you talk about the concentration of companies that are specifically looking for silver. And because of its geological footprint, you have to literally dig deeper and explore further, because the big deposits which were found in an epithermal fashion, real near the surface, have been exploited long, long, long ago. Now, when you talk about the demand meeting a dwindling supply, yes, you have an expansion in green and digital applications, and which is true. You have the electric vehicles, you have the solar panels, you have all of the applications that silver needs, or that needs silver in a digital and electronic and green world. iPads, iPhones, flat screen computers, anything that conducts electricity by and large uses silver or copper, which is also becoming harder and harder and harder to source. Copper is running into the same problems, or will run into the same problems that we're seeing in all of these commodities. And they're all being accumulated by China, because to them it's the same thing as wealth. But let's get to the point. So we have in nature a depleting footprint in geologic terms, and we have a increase in demand globally, not just from a monetary perspective, but also from an industrial perspective. And then you take a look at the top on down. When you look at the LME, the London Metals Exchange has the lowest number of ounces of silver since they've started keeping records in their warehouse, where if the number of ounces that have been delivered off the London Metals Exchange over the next several months continue at this pace, by mid-2023, they will have nothing. Now, I don't think they'll let it get that far, but that's how fast it's being depleted. When you look at the COMEX market, yet again last week, only 294.4 million ounces in the entire COMEX ecosystem, of which somewhere in the neighborhood of 34 or 5 million are in the registered category. 3.7 million ounces were delivered off last week. This is yet another 3-year low. So we're seeing a constant depletion from the top on down, from the LME, from the COMEX. We're seeing the authorized participants drain the ETFs like SLV. So we're seeing from the very, very top, from the ground, from the COMEX, from the
Yeah.
LME, from the ETFs, they're all being bled dry, and price is being used to misdirect
Yep.
everyone,
I love
including the
when you say
author who
that.
wrote that article. It's true. Whoever wrote that article literally is not paying attention, and they're being misdirected.
Yeah.
Where the perception of reality is doctored. It is maintained by price suppression and rhetoric. And people like that saying that filters its way through the ecosystem, where a financial advisor or a hedge fund trader may say, yeah, it's probably done. It's probably not, there'll be more silver. Let's look elsewhere.
Right.
So this rhetoric has an effect. The suppression of prices have an effect. And like I've said on your show before, if price was truly a reflection of demand, then who the hell and why the hell is the biggest money in the world draining these exchanges?
Yeah.
Why is India importing 300 million ounces of silver? Why are these countries doing this? Why are these big traders doing this, or these sovereign wealth funds or these family offices? Why are they taking metal off of the exchange? And remember, when you pull COMEX bars off the COMEX market, you are diminishing your liquidity tremendously. In order to get them back into COMEX, you have to be reintroduced and assayed. Doesn't work so well if you're in a hurry to get liquidity. So when these are being pulled off the exchange and going somewhere, it's a one-way ticket. So when you talk about misdirection, when you talk about a bullish setup for the price of gold and silver, it's extraordinary. And I think that this is just the very, very beginning right
Yeah.
now, where people are really globally starting to wake up
Yeah.
to what's going on. And I really honestly don't think that we've begun to see anything yet in terms of
Yeah.
what real supply shortages look like,
Yeah.
because the people in the mainstream are completely clueless as to what precious metals represent. The people who you and I talk to represent but 1/2 of 1% of the entire financial
Right.
matrix in this country. So move it up to 5%, that's a tenfold increase in demand, and like that, it's over.
Yeah. Yeah. I always love when people say, there's no silver shortage. I can go still buy it online perfectly fine. It's like that's not how it works. That's not how it works. That's not the reality. And we are just starting. And if you want an idea, look at premiums. I mean, there's no premiums on gold because gold isn't really that scarce. And I like how you always talk about that misdirect. What's that saying? You say like price is the
Price is a
greatest.
tool of misdirection. And
Yeah.
that's what it is, because you can
Yeah.
suppress the price, and what it does, most people never look under the hood.
Yeah.
It's like a
Yeah.
really pretty paint job, and underneath there's a squirrel running on a wheel chasing a nut, trying to get the
Yeah.
car to move. Well, that's kind of what it is here, where the price is misdirecting everyone into believing that gold and silver are not a place to be, yet the biggest money in the world is draining the supply. It's
Yeah.
it's counter to the argument, and it's counter to the price. So look, not only that, we're seeing more and more and more countries moving away from the dollar, and the places that they will go will be to gold and silver. Let me make a point here. So we talk about all of these countries that want to join the BRICS nations. I'm going to rattle off a bunch of countries, and I'm going to read a very interesting statistic so you can understand what I mean. Is these will be the ones. The Russian foreign minister just announced that over a dozen new countries are joining BRICS. He's talking about Algeria, Argentina, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Nicaragua, Turkey, Indonesia, Senegal, Afghanistan, Egypt, Kazakhstan, and Saudi Arabia. And so those countries have expressed and or already applied for BRICS. Now, I want you to remember some of those names. And when the article talks about BRICS Plus. I'm going to read some of the countries that are in this BRICS Plus ecosystem who are now being targeted and invited to join. You have Argentina in Latin America. You have Nicaragua in Central America. You have Algeria, Egypt, Iran, We talked about Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Nigeria, and Senegal in South Africa. You have Afghanistan, Kazakhstan in Russia. In Central Asia, you have India, Indonesia, and Thailand. In Southeast Asia, you have these countries that are all joining together, and all of them are massively accumulating commodities. When they talk about next on the list, the countries that they want to invite next: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Bolivia, Chile, Cuba, Ecuador, Peru, Uruguay, Venezuela, Azerbaijan, Mongolia, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Vietnam. All of those countries are going to be invited or have expressed interest. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is gold holdings as a percentage of reserves. Venezuela, 82%. Uzbekistan, 65%. Kazakhstan, 63%. Bolivia, 55%. Belarus, 40%. Turkey, 29%. Pakistan, 29%. These are all the countries that want to join or are being invited or have expressed interest. What are they doing with their money? They are stockpiling commodities, and in particular gold. So when you see the price of gold and silver not reacting the way we really think it should, yet these countries massively accumulating it, and this drive away from the dollar, it's all being suppressed on COMEX and on the London Metals Exchange and being delivered to these countries who are going to use it to provide an equal footing at the table on the new BRICS currency system, which by these standards will equate to the majority of human population when the switch is flipped. And I really do believe that this is why you are going to see ultimately, to the people who say you can still buy it, fine. It's never been so hard to get, but just wait. Just wait until it becomes quite obvious that the only way that you have a seat at the table is to accumulate all these precious metals. So if you are one of these countries, you have a vested interest in accumulating it as fast as you can, but not letting the price rise too fast. And they are all using suppression of the paper markets to accumulate the hell out of the physicals and give themselves equal footing at a table where you will be listened to by the amount of what you're bringing to the table. Instead of, like in the United Nations, one country having more weight over another, like the United States, these countries will all use commodities to peg their place at the table so that everyone has equal footing in what will be a massive coalition against the Western hegemony. And you can see it. It's all centering around gold and silver and other commodities. It's just the beginning, man. It is just the beginning. So to those people out there who say you can still get it, great. We can still sell it to you too. But I will tell you, as God is my witness, if I had a gun to my head and said, what will put you out of business before anything else, it would be the inability to source product. It would be the only thing that I could think of long before the government say gold and silver are illegal. You won't be able to find it in this country. We're not there yet, but all it would take would be for some sort of really big market crash where people wake up and say, my God, I need to protect myself. And if 2% of the people in this country move to put money into precious metals, it's over. Like that, it's over. So yeah, it's just beginning. That I can tell you.
And guys, you got to remember, this is Andy Shectman. You know, this is the guy that can fill a $50 million order, right, in 2 days, right? That lady from Texas, that billionaire. Nobody else can pull this stuff off. Like, this isn't just some random, you know, this is one of the top dogs talking about this, and that doesn't speak for nothing. You know, that really should speak for itself when we talk about the severity of this.
You know what, man? We live in a cynical world, and a lot of people will think he's talking his book. I get it.
Right.
Look, I mean, I've done this for 33 years. I don't need to put myself, I've been saying this same thing for over 2 years now.
Right.
Go back and listen to any of my videos. You will see a common thread. I talk about gold being reclassified tier 1. I talk about the US will have a digital currency ever since March of 2020, when Nancy Pelosi said viruses can live on currency, and she wanted within her sub-House Committee Finance bill a digital Fed token. I've been saying that. I've been saying you will see the BRICS nations accentuate themselves and grow around the Belt Road Initiative and issue a new gold-backed currency. I've been saying all of this for 2 years, and I've also been saying that this market will identify itself by the inability to source product. Look, Rick Rule, a very good friend of mine, says very concisely that the entire financial matrix from Joe Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund has 1/2 of 1% allocation to metals. What if it's 5%? In 1980, it was 8%. The average of the last 40 years is 2.5%. Fine, go to the average, to the mean. That's a five-fold increase in demand. Bang, gone.
Right.
And if it's this hard to get at 0.5%, what happens if everyone says, I just need 5% of my money? And isn't it interesting that that's what financial advisors tell you should have, 5 to 10%. At 10%, you're talking a 20-fold increase in demand.
Yeah.
And in 24 hours, it's all gone. So when I say this, I'm looking down the road, right? You know, when you ski, I don't know if you've ever skied, but if you're a downhill skier, they tell you don't ever look at the tips of your skis. You gotta look 5-8 feet ahead of you. You don't ever want to look at the tips, you'll cross them. Instead, you look out in front of you. When you're driving, you don't look at the hood of the car, you look out in front of you. I'm looking out in front. And what I see is it will be a growing understanding of what precious metals represent. It is not an investment, it is wealth. And people will understand that at some point. And this is why most people never succeed in investing, because they are reactionary instead of doing something proactively.
Right.
And you know, and preparing reluctantly is something that you have to do instead of being reactionary. Ask the poor souls who didn't quite, well, you can't ask, but you know, the people who were on the Titanic who thought the ship could never sink. You know, many people died because people were reactionary and it was too late after you hit the iceberg. You need to be proactive and hope you never need to use the metal. And if you do, you're damn glad you have it. If not, you give it to your kids. And maybe it will represent a tool of opportunity rather than emergency. Maybe whenever the dust settles and everything clears, there will be things that you can buy on the cheap using your gold, using your silver. In the meantime, to me, what it represents is pure wealth at a period of time where I think chaos hasn't even started yet. Yes, it's been chaotic the last few years. But wait until the dollar as the world reserve currency. Then you will see what chaos truly is. And what's going to be the biggest shame of all is that because people focus on price, so does the biggest money in the world. And the biggest money in the world knows that in order for them to methodically take possession of all the world's commodities, they have to slowly make the price rise. But first, they make it volatile and keep it suppressed so people don't want it. And then they can clear the tables of the physical. And then they let go of the paper price, because they have so much money that they are able to control the paper price with levered contracts and create a perception of reality that is allowing the most sophisticated money in the world to de-dollarize and proactively put themselves in a position. The rest of the world will wake up and say, my God, what just happened? And it's too late.
It's too late.
And that I believe to my soul, I believe.
Yeah, I always think about this, you know, like this video is going to come out on December 1st, 2022, but silver is what, $23, somewhere around there. Someone on YouTube in 3-4 years watching this video, right? Just watching, you know, in the year 2026, wishing they could build a time capsule and go back to this day that we're in right now, paying $23 for an ounce of silver, you know. And I feel bad because a lot of these people don't even know about silver. But imagine the people that watch this video right now that do know and they still don't. That would be the worst feeling, right? Just like the people, oh, I wish I can go back and buy Bitcoin when it was 5 cents, right? And imagine the people that knew about it back then and still didn't. That's a much worse feeling. And I do like how you also said proactive. When I'm investing into something, when you're investing into something, you got to look what it's going to do. What is it used for, right? And silver makes the most sense, by far makes the most sense, even beyond gold, right? So if we're like real estate, if you're going to invest into a house or, you know, property somewhere, you look at what that neighborhood's doing. Are they building schools or tearing schools down, building shopping centers? Because then when you go to sell, you can get, you know, you have to look forwards, like the skis thing. And nothing makes as much sense as silver. The stars are aligning. Like I always say, the perfect storm is here. And you know, right now is the time to buy. I mean, if you think $23 for an ounce of silver is too pricey, I don't know what to tell you, you know. But
yeah, no, I think it's not. And I think, for, you know, feeling bad for those people who didn't listen, well, you've done your job.
yeah,
Look at the branch that you've put yourself out on, the limb that you stand out on naked screaming, hey, hey,
Right.
hey, look here. I do the
Right.
same thing. And, you know, we both take heat. We both, people say thank you. People say you're full of crap.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to have to decide for themselves. And look, the bottom line is simply this. I look at silver as wealth, period. End of story. This is not an investment. It will make you wealthy. It could, but that isn't going to mean the same thing maybe as it did before. Being
Right.
wealthy in dollar terms will mean the dollar is getting crushed, and spending money and going out and doing things the way that, you know, being wealthy might have used to meant, I don't think we'll have the same, it won't mean the same thing. I mean, what I basically am saying is that silver can help you survive what is coming and maybe even thrive. To me, where that wealth will come into play is once the dust settles, it will be taking advantage of opportunities, of maybe it's blue chip stocks trading at single digit price to earnings ratios, paying a fat dividend. Maybe it's that house, that cabin you've always wanted in the North Woods, selling for 15 cents on the dollar. Who knows what it is, but there will be opportunities because most people are fully invested in dollars. And I think when you see the biggest money in the world divesting of dollars, for people not to notice that is a big mistake. This is the time where if you are not a contrarian, you're going to end up being a victim. That I do believe wholeheartedly.
Mm. All right. Well, I think we should wrap this episode up here. I mean, this was a great episode. Remember, we're gonna do the live stream next week. And I'm excited for that, to hear all your questions. And you know, I know that a lot of you want to talk to Andy, so that's going to be a lot of fun. If you did want to purchase silver, make sure you send an email to info@milesfranklin.com. Let them know Silver Slayer sent you. And also, if you want to, it's the bottom left-hand corner. There's a link. And like Andy said, the website will be up in a week or two, somewhere around then. Just stay patient, you know, make sure you do it right. That's the best way to do it. But like he even said, being a hybrid is great because you can still build that business relationship. So yeah, Andy, is there anything else you want to say before we head off?
No, you know, just if you're interested in getting silver, make sure you send Franklin, mention the Silver Slayer sent us. We'll send you an updated inventory. We'll make sure your listeners are getting questions answered, great prices, maybe the best in the country, great service, and we'll work hard to continue to honor our relationship, our friendship, and the tremendous amount of work that you're doing to help bring this information to the public. For one, I am greatly honored to be part of it, and look forward to continuing this with you, seeing this through to the end. And
Yeah.
you and I can ride shotgun and you know, help as many
Yeah.
people as we can, and do the best we can for everyone out there. So I, like I said, I really appreciate it, and look forward to doing a live stream with you
Yeah.
next week. Let's get that going, and you can do it for even a couple of hours and answer all the
Yeah,
questions
I'm
out there that
down.
people
Yeah,
have.
that would be awesome. I know, because I'm sure a lot of people are gonna want to get their opportunity to get their question asked. So yeah, I'm down to, you know, sit down and chat for a while.
And
That'd
you
be
know what we can
awesome.
do? We can do some giveaways that night too. So
Yeah,
can draw some names and do some giveaways. I'd be more than happy to do that as
that's
well.
awesome. That sounds like a great idea. Yeah. I mean, honestly, because like, man, like I appreciate everyone so much for, you know, for tuning in. And you know, I really do. And if that's the least I can do, and I'm sure Andy appreciates it as well.
Do
So
I
yeah.
do.
So yeah, anyways, we're gonna wrap this video up here. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I'll see you guys soon. Peace.